We Have Issues is a weekly podcast full of reviews of comics and oversharing. We use grown-up language to make very childish jokes. You can find the show at wehaveissues.net, as well as anywhere else where average to not too bad podcasts can be found.
Film, but it's only a trailer. I like the first film.
I don't mind it.
Not the one that was never seen in the 90s. I like the who was it? Michael Chick Flick.
Chick Flick, yeah. I think it's funny because he's the least chick flick actor ever. I think it's interesting that now we're bitching about how many superhero films there are.
I'm not sure I want a dark and broody Fantastic Four.
A couple of people have said Fantastic Four's supposed to be family fun, and I'm like, well, A, I don't think the comics have ever been fun for all the family, but B, I mean, they have a family in them, but one of them is perpetually clinically depressed and wishes he was someone else. The married couple in it are constantly having trouble finding time for each other as a married couple
and their children.
It's not really that cheerful, but and then I've made the point a couple of times. You know, I mean, that's fine.
It's not that cheerful in a subtext. No, fuck it.
You know, if you want
nothing one of those days.
If you want a family-friendly Fantastic Four film, that's fine because there are two of them.
Yeah, I sort of still. I get less excited by movies than I do. I'm not that excited by superhero movies. Like, whatever happens in the movie, it won't take away how much I love Hickman's Fantastic Four, and for me, that's the definitive story of the Fantastic Four. I don't really need to read anything else because I loved it and loved what came next less. And when I've read like older stuff, don't really care for it. You know, I don't really give a monkeys about superhero films anymore.
No.
Don't give a monkeys about sort of, you know, screwball. Well, no, I probably like screwball comedies more actually.
I've enjoyed a lot of them. Agent Carter's really good. It's just really good. Agent Carter. But
is it like a Jackie Chan sort of?
Yeah, it is. But with a chick. I've loved a lot of them, and I really like Paul Rudd. But it feels like the only reason people are getting excited about an Ant-Man film is because they weren't expecting to get excited about Guardians of the Galaxy. Like who
Paul
was
Rudd
really clamouring for an Ant-Man film?
Well, I was looking forward to it when Edgar Wright was going to direct it because I really dig Edgar Wright.
So what you were looking forward to was an Edgar Wright film?
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't give a shit about Ant-Man.
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you know, I bet at any point in the last 5 years, if Marvel had tried to launch an Ant-Man film, Ant-Man comic, even if it had all of the exact same elements in it that the film did, none of these people would have bought it.
Yeah. But it's like Batman films. I don't find that the Batman films have a lot of rewatch value for me.
But you love Batman comics.
But I love Batman comics. But they're not it's not the same fucking medium. It's not the same thing.
No, one's a really good medium.
Yeah.
That allows you to get very. I thought about this. I thought about this a little bit recently. That like actually they're all really good mediums. And who am I kidding? I love all of them.
I just find comics more meaty than films. You know, my favourite sort of film is a comedy film because if I'm looking for something light and fluffy and to distract me, movies are great for that. So I quite like comedies. I don't really go for sort of, if I want drama, melodrama and action, I much prefer in a comic book. It just feels more personal and meaty, and
do you know it
allows you more, even though it's showing you an image, it allows you more interpretation as well in terms of.
I like character stuff in comics a lot more, and I think how it came up was somebody was talking about horror comics and that horror comics don't really scare them and never really have. And the truth is, even though I was reading a lot of Vertigo comics, which initially were horror comics in the early 90s, and I enjoy them because I enjoy reading that stuff. I enjoy that sort of mythology, that slightly dark mythology, and I like the characterization that comes out of those settings. I've never been scared by a horror comic either. I've got quite a high threshold for everything except jump scares anyway.
Yeah, well,
I think.
out and out horror doesn't scare me in comic books either, and gore and so forth. Psychological stuff, if it's done really well, I think comics is a great medium. If you work in the page turn right as well, I think the first series of Lock and Key, and there's a scene where the kid is by a well, and this horrible creature comes out of the well, and it happens perfectly on a page turn. I shit a brick the first time I saw that. Jumped in a way that I very rarely do when I'm watching films or...
Really?
And often I find that if I've read something that's psychologically unsettling in a comic, it stays for me way longer. So the horror lasts. It doesn't last while I'm reading. It just unsettles me for a period of time. The only series I can think that really does that to me actually is BSG. That leaves me feeling really fucking odd if I watch it too often, because I feel like I'm down in the submarine a bit.
You see, all of the different media, and I guess TV and film are very different from each other as well, in that regard, especially now that people are doing long form TV.
Yeah.
But all of the different media can create really lasting images and ideas for me. I mean, I found that with a music video in the last few days. There's a music video for a song by a band called Flying Lotus, I think, called You'll Never Catch Me, which has a very creepy video. It's a really good video, but it's a really creepy video that is basically, it's a funeral for two young, like a 10-year-old girl and so everyone's sitting there. And it's kind of it's like there's a hip hop vocal on it, but the music is very cut up jazz hip hop, sort of a little bit, what was Brown Paper Bag?
What, trip hop?
No, there was another name for it. It was around the same time as trip hop, but it's that very cut up, very discordant tempo and stuff, and I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, it's very inspired by jazz, but it can be quite electronic.
Do you mean like the Ronnie Size sort of stuff?
Yeah, exactly, Ronnie Size.
Yeah, well, that's progressive drum and bass.
That's it. So it's kind of got that going on, and everyone in the church is mourning, are just being mourners, and it shows you the coffins and the children at rest, and then a particular break happens in the music, and the two kids get up out of the coffins and start dancing, and it's kind of a very old-fashioned but very frenetic sort of dance. Again, there's a name for it, and I don't know what it is. And so they're this little beacon of movement and energy, and they're smiling, and they're like having a great time, and everyone around them is still mourning as if it's still And then the song goes up and down and up and down. The first time I saw it, the video completely creeped me out. I was like, I don't really know how I feel about this.
Yeah.
We don't know how they died. It's probably not a nice way. And it's kind of, I don't really like it. And yet I find myself having to go back to it. It's like I know I've talked to you about the two Seer videos have the same sort of impact on me. So any media I think can do that, can put these ideas in your head that are very haunting. And certainly I keep going back to comics because they keep doing that for me. But the horror thing is how I came to an understanding about how the different things work for me. And maybe not for everybody, but definitely for me. Because I'm a rereader, and when I'm reading, I read with a stammer. Because I'm not very good at remembering names and stuff like that.
Too,
So when I'm reading prose, I do it all the time, and I kind of do it in comics too. I find I have to keep going back a couple of pages just to remember where I am and stuff. So pacing stuff doesn't always work on me, which I think is why comics don't scare me that much.
Okay.
So a film can really scare me because the filmmaker completely controls the rate at which you're being stimulated. There are controls in a comic. You've mentioned when you turn the page and you see something and there's a cliffhanger at the end of a page and then you flip the page. You can do that in comics, but because of the frenetic way I read comics, that pacing doesn't always work for me. One of the things I love about comics is that you do it at your own pace.
Quite right.
You read it at your own pace, which really works for me. But film can scare me because I've got no control of the rate at which I'm being stimulated.
Yeah.
And a really good filmmaker makes use of that. And with prose, the benefit of prose is everyone always talks in terms of budget. Oh, a comic's like a film, but with an infinite budget, you can do what you like. And if that was an argument for how good comics are, and I've used that argument, but if that was an argument for how good comics are, then novels would be the best thing because you can literally say anything and it's all. And
also in this day and age where CGI is becoming relatively cheap, I think also it's bunk. I mean, you can pretty much put anything you can imagine on the screen now.
And although actually then you've got people like Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely and Matt Fraction and Christian Ward and teams like that that start doing stuff that you literally... But then the limit is your imagination.
There's a name. Writers certainly who can write in this weird metaphysical way, but also comics is a place where artists like Christian Ward can add their impressionistic art to the story to bring another dimension that you definitely can't do in movies. Like Christian Ward, his art, when I'm really enjoying it, is a bit like, what Kubrick attempts at the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, only legible.
Yeah. Another dimension, but not another galaxy. Is that the Beastie Boys song? Another dimension, intergalactic planetary. Another dimension, another dimension, another dimension, another dimension. And prose, the limits are entirely my imagination, and because I tend to have quite frenetic and dark imagination, and it's horror can work on that thing. Like, this is why, as much I don't really like H.P. Lovecraft, the stuff that apparently is so attractive about his writing that I've seen other writers work on, like Stephen King and people like that. In prose, you can
that's the medium that I like. Thrillers. I like a prose thriller. Not particularly fussed in movies, not all that fussed in comics, but in prose, I love a thriller. Yeah,
because you can work on. Again, you put the pace. You can control the pace a certain amount, but and you can control how the information is fed. The pace of information being fed to the viewer, but it's not a definitive. It's not a definitive medium, which comics and film both are. So you can introduce so much mystery that you can trick the reader into scaring themselves, which you can't really do in comics or in films.
No, but
you can a little bit.
It's a slower feed as well, isn't it? You prose. No, it could be the way I read it, but don't work anywhere near as quickly as comics and movies. They're not quite so. Even if the pace is high in a book, it's still a less visceral experience than comics and me. But it's taking away those images, isn't it? Really, that's why I think so.
Well, that's it. Comics, prose entirely works on the imagination of the reader, and film entirely takes that option away. And so both of them, I can find both of them scary, but for very different reasons. But comics, although again we've mentioned people who play around, and I think Ray Fawkes does this as well in his in Intersect, I think, which is his recent comic. You can get away with a lot of expressionistic stuff and not quite, and not giving the reader as much information as they think they're getting from the page and stuff like that. But it's still quite a distinctive. You are having someone else's imagination given to you.
Yeah.
Whereas in prose that doesn't necessarily work. And I'm not sure what my initial point was. It was just that these things are really different from each other, and I like it.
Yeah.
People always talk in terms of which is better, but it's each one is working a different muscle in you.
Why does something always have to be better?
I don't know.
Can't it just be different?
I think it can be different.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they each work completely different muscles. Yeah. And so it's... To
be fair, though, I mean, both of us are getting to the point now where the hype machine isn't really designed to engage us.
Oh God, it just frustrates me. I've been such a cantankerous fuck on Facebook about
just on Facebook, eh?
Well, no, everywhere really.
Yeah.
But we had two or three bits of information drop at once, and it must have been a coincidence. But it's created frustrating levels of negativity and entitlement in geeks. So you get, even if the Fantastic Four trailer had been amazing and everyone had loved it, the fact that it's a reboot so soon after the others is going to get a certain group of people complaining that, well, we only just had the last one. Why couldn't they have just made that better? Because that's how the movie industry works. Yeah. And so that happened, and the Ghostbusters thing happened at the same time.
Do you know, that has got me. That's a really interesting casting choice they've made there. I really like the idea of that, because certainly from my point of view, how on earth do you cast 3 or 4 actors, male actors, in parts or similar parts to the ones played by these iconic figures of 80s comedy and Ernie Hudson?
You just made a point that I hadn't. That's a really, really good point that I hadn't actually considered before. But the amount of people who are acting like this is the most disrespectful decision they could have ever made, and actually it's the most respectful decision.
I don't know who it disrespects.
Well, there are people who wouldn't have been happy unless it was basically the first film again, I think.
Well, watch it again. It's on Blu-ray now. It looks great. Yeah. Watch it again. It's great.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. By going with a completely female cast, that it short circuits all of those comparisons.
Yeah, for sure.
I was doing fine. I'm
sorry, Ernie Hudson, by the way, if you're listening.
I was being a bit wry, but probably coming across as a bit more angry about it than I actually was. And then someone on Facebook suggested that this is happening now because Harold Ramis wouldn't have wanted it to happen, and so he died, and now they're... And I was like,
he died on purpose.
I don't think that's factually correct, because it doesn't sound like it's that different a project than the one they were working on that seemed to be happening immediately before he died. And also I was like, well, okay, it's okay that you're upset about this, but co-opting a dead actor, it seems...
whose views you probably don't know
or reflect at all.
Yeah.
It seemed a little bit dark and horrible for me, and this person thought they were being respectful of this person's wishes while actually just mapping their wishes onto him. And I was like, okay, that was actually a stage too far for me. I'm not having that. Also, there's a rumor going around that Chris Pratt, that they're rebooting Indiana Jones with Chris Pratt in the main role. And so all of these three things happened at once. And it's almost like it was designed to make people behave in ways that would upset me. I think.
Well,
and upset them. I mean, if they were happy, then I'd be like, yeah, fill your boots. But they don't seem happy.
What confuses me is there is so much art produced. So much. I was going through, just in comics, so let's take comics as an example. I was going through Comixology today, choosing the comics that I wanted to read, I wanted to buy. And there's just a staggering number of comics that are produced each week for you to choose from. So why would you spend all your time and energy shitting on something you don't like when you could be spending that time trawling through Comixology? Because there'd probably be something there that you really dig. And if there isn't, go to the doctor, because you're a fucking sociopath and you need help.
So many original films as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, in any given year, there are so many original films that nobody ends up talking about.
Yeah, go and support the films that no one else is watching, and then you can be a hipster about it.
This is your We Have Issues reminder that there are original... the original things being released all the time that you could be paying attention to instead.
You may sigh when I say this, but I quite like Kevin Smith's take on all this. And he often says, don't spend your time shitting on someone's art that you don't like. If you don't like it, go and make your own. Go and write your own art. Go and draw your own pictures. Go and shoot a movie with your friends, even if it's just go and make a podcast with your friends, you know? And this is how this came about, is there wasn't a podcast there were lots of podcasts I enjoyed, but I wanted to make one that I liked more than all the others. So we ended up making a podcast together, you know? Go and do something for yourself and stop shitting on other people.
I totally agree. The only counter to that I would give, and I've not completely reformed. I still think all sorts of things that are completely wrong. Don't worry, I will be saying annoying things that make me seem like I'm completely right wing.
Well, you are, aren't you?
Probably in the next 10 minutes I'll end up saying something like that. But I used to say that sometimes when it wasn't helpful to say it. When it's geek entitlement by people who are always represented in every medium, that's absolutely right. It's really, especially in podcasts, there really is no reason to listen to a podcast that you don't like. When it's, the only reason I even bring this up, and it seems really farty, is I've heard that argument and I've used that argument when people are complaining about race representation or gender representation.
Okay.
And of course,
but I can't speak for that.
Well, no. And I mean, and of course, on the one hand, you're absolutely right. On the other hand, and actually in comics, you can't really complain about this because it is actually relatively easy to do a webcomic or something. Economically, these things aren't really out of people's hands. But when it comes to TV and film, and certainly mainstream comics like Marvel or DC comics, obviously the die is weighted towards white straight men. So it's kind of it is actually quite difficult. Economically, it's quite difficult to get for women or people from people of any sort of like.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with people complaining about representation.
Yeah.
I have a problem with people shitting on stuff just because they want to shit on it. You know, stuff like, and especially, I don't know.
No, I agree. I know that's I totally agree. In the spirit of what you're saying, I absolutely agree with. I think you were quite explicit about it. I don't actually think what you said could be misinterpreted. It's just that particular sentence I've heard used for evil as well as good.
Yeah.
And I've actually used it for evil as well. And maybe I am being a reformed. Maybe I'm being that evangelical ex-smoker or something.
And I'd be very cautious as well, sort of trying to sort of speak about people's attitudes towards minority representation or majority representation when it comes to women. When there's two middle-class, middle-aged men in the room.
Are there more of them?
Yeah, isn't it like 51 to 49?
Oh, no wonder we're so scared of them.
My fingers are covered in gold paint.
Why are your fingers covered in gold paint?
I finished making my Battlestar Galactica model today.
I saw that at the beginning of this week. Is it looking good?
It is. I mean, it's I haven't got a grey that I need to just finish some detail on it. I'm really pleased with it. It looks really nice. My wife came home, looked at it, and her first question was, "Is it staying there?"
That's supportive.
Yeah.
The voice you are hearing, the voice you're hearing right now, listener, is me, Nick. I'm Nick. This is We Have Issues. We are a comic. We're a podcast that talks about comics.
I'm definitely glad these are less awkward now. It's good.
I was going to say, because normally I say we'll be talking about comics in a bit, but we've kind of been talking about comics.
Yeah, sorry about that.
How did that happen?
Sorry about those of you that have downloaded it to listen to 20 minutes of bullshit before. Although, you know. The
other voice you can hear is...
I'm James, hello.
Is James, hello. Hello, James.
Hi, Nick.
So, yes. So, this is... we're going to talk about comics from this week very, very soon.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about representation, I do just want to mention, although it isn't primarily about representation and it isn't about comics really, but might as well be about comics.
Okay.
There's a very good Lee Alexander talk that's available to watch online. It's ostensibly about... It's in a video game setting. She's talking to video game people and she mainly writes and speaks about video games, but the stuff she says is really pertinent to comics as well. It's basically, a lot of the talk is about counterculture in music in the 90s, but her point is that any healthy, growing medium should have room for a counterculture. Kind of ends up being about gender, and very tangentially about gender, because if you have a conversation about counterculture in video games and probably in comics, you're also going to be talking about gender. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A session at the end that do kind of come from a Gamergate perspective, and she deals with them. She responds to them really, really well, in a way that I think is really just the way she talks about her chosen medium is great. And I think there are lessons within what she says, especially towards the beginning and towards the end, that are really, there are lots of takeaways there for comics.
You talk about it on this week's Two Grown Men, which is an excellent podcast.
I think this week's was a really good episode, but people haven't really got back to us about it.
That's fine.
That might be because we're really bad at responding to emails.
I don't even look at the emails, I'm sorry. I'm bad at responding to emails sent to my personal account, let alone any others. I'm not very good at communicating with people at the moment. It's not my fault.
I saw an excellent picture/comment thing online today. It was one of those screen grabs of somebody's text. It said something along the lines of, "I'm sorry, I'm going to be late because of everything I am and everything." Because of who I am, basically. Yeah. Which is, I can relate to that. The other thing I wanted to share, I was talking to James about this immediately before we started recording, I think. This week's episode of Travis Bickle on the Riviera.
Oh, yeah, you were going on about that.
I won't go on about it now.
Please.
It's not about comics, but it is about the movies of Steven Spielberg, specifically the early movies of Steven Spielberg. I think it's unlikely that many of the people listening don't at least really like at least one or two of his earlier films. So it's a very smart podcast. The production job on it is a little bit punishing, but it's a really, really, really good episode. I think it's about 20 minutes, and it says some stuff about Raiders of the Lost Ark that I hadn't considered before because I don't watch The Big Bang Theory. And apparently that's where we take our film criticism from these days. So that's that.
Well, both Siskel and Ebert are dead now, so Barry Norman doesn't do Film 74 anymore, so what are you going to do?
He hasn't done Film 74 in, what, over 30 years? I like
the sequel, Film 86. That was good. I enjoyed that, but since then...
Yeah.
There's a thing on called Film 2015 now, but it's got that nice lady from Strictly Come Dancing on it and stuff, and they talk about films I've never heard of.
I've watched that programme, Strictly Come Dancing, and there is no cum in it at all.
No, it's a real disappointment.
You can, I'll put links to the Lee Alexander talk and the Travis Bickle on the Riviera podcast episode in the show notes for this episode. You'll be able to find the show notes at wehaveissues.net. You can also find all of our previous episodes and quite diligent show notes in there. I put timestamps for every review, so if you want to jump to a particular review or just bypass the reviews and listen to us talking to each other about other stuff,
bypass the whole podcast and go on and listen to something we've linked to.
You can just skip forward normally, I think. Yeah, well, I mean, that's true as well.
But do subscribe, review, and tell your friends. So, because even if you don't listen, that makes us feel better. Yeah, we're on Facebook as well. We are on Twitter. The podcast has a Twitter account. It's IssuesPod. Yeah.
I tweet at NickSite, and James tweets at
Thundercock. At Thundercock.
James Momb.
Oh, right, yeah.
As I said, we have got a Facebook group. We have an email account. It's issuespod@gmail.com.
Don't look at me like that. You don't give me access to it, so I don't know. I'm not allowed to look at it.
And
because apparently I don't get back to people.
And obviously you can. Well, maybe not obviously. Maybe there are still some podcasts that people just do on their normal blog and don't have any RSS or something on an old MySpace account. I'm sure those still exist.
MySpace.
But you can subscribe to us anywhere where where podcasts can be found.
How drunk are you today?
Really drunk.
Yeah.
So your podcatcher of choice. A lot of people use iTunes. A lot of people use the iOS podcast app, which I
have to say I find that a very friendly thing to use, but only because iTunes made it so difficult to update your podcasts through iTunes that I sort of went out. I think that was the idea, maybe.
I use Pocket Casts, and Stitcher is apparently very good.
Pocket Cast, I think, is still only available on Android.
Actually, they've recently got a desktop, like a web app as well, where you can listen to stuff. I don't know if it's available on iOS devices.
It wasn't last time I checked.
That's a shame. Very nominal fee, very small fee, but it's a good app. I like it. I like it a lot.
Thanks for that review.
That wasn't sponsored. No, none of these people sponsor us for some reason. Don't know why.
I wish Buddy Power Hitters would sponsor us.
I don't know what that is. Should we talk about this week's comics?
Yeah, let's.
Do you want to go first?
There are loads of them this week. I know. I have gone through Comixology. There are a ton, but I picked out 3 this week.
Did you buy? Oh, 3.
3. I bought 3, and I believe it came to less than £5 sterling.
That's cheap as chips.
It's cheap as 3 comic books. First book I'm going to talk about is an all-ages book. It's a number 1. It's from Boombox. It's Munchkin.
Ooh, like after the game.
It is, and in fact, it's licensed from Steve Jackson Games. So I believe it's is it a trading card kind of game, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, you buy the whole thing at once. It's a really interesting game, actually. It's quite cheap and easy to pick up. And
it's a kind of sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons style vibe to it. So, in level 1, Munchkin, as it's called, you get 3 stories and a little bit of back matter. So it's kind of not really anthology, but it cuts it up into quite sort of small, bite-sized chunks, which makes it very friendly for the all-ages reader. I'm thinking kids, which is who it's really read for. First one is What is a Munchkin? It just sort of sets the scene. It's very funny, very tongue-in-cheek. So the first one is someone is explaining basically to these kids what Munchkin's all about and sort of trying to convince them that it's not quite as scary as it is, and there's lots of really gross-looking monsters and really sort of colourful-looking characters in it as well, drawn in this sort of very reminiscent of Adventure Time and that sort of style. And then we go into basically a story where a kid and his friends are playing, and they've all got very well-developed characters. So there's a sorcerer, like a dwarf character, and a warrior. And the whole way through it, he's kind of pondering what he could be, but in a very sort of smart-ass way. And in the end, his friends are giving him quite a lot of crap for not being able to make it, and he kind of turns the tables on them at the end. It's really fun, written with a really light hand, and with these really vibrant monsters the whole way through it. Very enjoyable, very funny. Horrible kid. I mean, he's not nice, really. The sorcerer is very funny. There's lots of sort of quite up to date, sort of tongue in cheek stuff about. It's the bit that made me laugh out loud. So the wizard is talking in a really irritatingly patronising way that how he was once a weak human like himself, and how he became an arcane master, bending the world to his will, with over 300 Twitter followers, which tickled me no end. But
that's about half what I've got.
Yeah, no, you're doing all right. I'm in the mid 500s now. I'm doing okay, but it's mostly cannabis advocating feeds that think I'm interested in that.
Mine's mostly bots.
Yeah, that's
what. But I like them. I like my army of bots.
And the final story is basically 2 guys demonstrating that in the dungeon there is no loyalty. It's every person for themselves, and no one's to be trusted. So it's all about double crossing and so forth. It's a quick read. It's not a long read, but it's just so frigging cute. If you've there was only one thing that concerned me in terms of this is a book that I'd be inclined to give to a kid, only sometimes mild swearing doesn't necessarily translate from the US to the UK, so things like piss are quite, but that doesn't appear in it. There's the kid has a sword and he calls it the sneaky bastard sword. So
that's cheeky. It's difficult, isn't it?
It is cheeky. I think you'd probably want to be giving it to a slightly older, sort of, 11, 12-year-old upwards, rather than, you don't want your sort of primary school children learning their first swear words from a comic you've given them, I suspect. But Munchkin, it was very good value. I forget the exact price, but obviously on digital it was less than £2, which I thought was marvellous. Second book I bought was from King Dynamite, which I guess is an imprint of the Dynamite. And I notice there's a range of King Dynamite.
Is that the King Features ones?
Yeah, I guess so. This is Flash Gordon. You haven't got this as well?
No, I'm really glad you picked that up though, because I was deliberating over it, and it looked really good.
It's Flash Gordon #1 by Ben Acker, Ben Blacker from Thrilling Adventure Hour.
Yeah.
And Lee Ferguson is the illustrator as billed. And it's a Flash Gordon set after the initial invasion of Earth by Ming. So Flash, Dale, and Dr. Zarkov are traveling to try and basically build they're building a rebellion against Ming the Merciless. And they visit a highly technologically a planet that's entire culture is based around technology in order to steal a piece of technology that will allow them to broadcast messages to the citizens of the universe in the same way that Ming the Merciless is able to. So Ming the Merciless obviously appears omnipotent because he's able to broadcast these messages to everyone, and Dr. Zarkov has worked out how he does it. So they travel to this world to do so, and there's some intrigue there with it's a matriarchal society. It's ruled by a princess or a queen, and her sister is supposedly part of the rebellion, and it's with her that they travel to these mines to get this sort of diamond, this piece of technology to be able to translate. I have to say, I enjoyed the art very much. It's got a lovely sort of classic style to it. Very much fits the Flash Gordon mould. I found the writing a little bit too verbose. It feels a little bit overwritten. Maybe it's fun, but there's an awful lot going on, and it kind of felt to me like there was 2 issues worth of story. Like in one issue, and it kind of at times it got confusing as to what's going on, because there's some like weird intrigue and stuff going on towards the back of the book, and I didn't feel like relationships and characters had been developed enough for it to kind of pass for me. It didn't make sense. I mean, it's good, and I don't want to knock it. I did enjoy it. I will probably pick up #2. And it could be me as well. I would like to caveat it by saying I read this morning after I woke up, and I woke up in a very odd mood this morning. So it might have been the reader, but yeah, there were times when I found it overwritten. There's sort of really lengthy speech bubbles. And see, the problem is I don't know whether my criticism is based on the fact that I know that they write radio style plays. So, as I was reading it, I was thinking, well, there's so much dialogue in this. It's like a radio play. And it's like, well, but I can see what's happening. Show me, don't tell me, So there was a little bit of that going on. Overall, it was an enjoyable experience. Flash is pleasingly dumb. Dale is pleasingly aloof. And Dr. Zarkov is pleasingly cheeky, cheesy, and very, very clever at the same time. So those characters are kind of developed well enough. It's just the supporting players around them. I felt I didn't know what was going on some of the time. It left me a little bit like you were talking about earlier, flipping backwards and forwards, trying to work out what on earth was going on. Overall, though, well worth checking out if you enjoy that sort of old serial style drama that Flash Gordon delivers. Yeah, well worth checking out. I mean, it's a good book, but not a great book.
I mean, that's interesting because Acker and Blacker have written comics before.
Yeah.
But that does sometimes happen when people are used to writing a lot in one media and then move across to another.
There's a lot of snappy to and forth, and it sometimes makes it hard to. That there's so much snappy back and forth. I'm trying to sort of process that and the plot, and it just felt like there were too many layers for me. But as I say, it could be the reader, because the dialogue is the dialogue's good, the writing's good, But
I haven't read it, but one of the strengths of the Thrilling Adventure Hour is how dense and snappy it is.
Yeah.
Obviously in radio you can't have a minute's silence, and they write very vibrant, very quick characters. So you saying that doesn't seem that far-fetched, let's put it that way. But you liked overall. I mean, it looked gorgeous.
Overall I liked it. I mean, I didn't hate it. I just, like I said, it was a bit cluttered, maybe. The
thing that stopped me buying it was because there were actually 2 issues of Flash Gordon on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I think the other one was the final issue of the previous series. And they both looked great, actually. But I was like, no, I don't really understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I didn't. But okay, cool. It sounds good.
Sorry, I was just going ahead trying to pick up the name of a character in this book. I didn't find it, so I don't know why I addressed it. It's bad to leave silence. I mean, if someone did a comic book of us doing this podcast, it would look awful.
Well, I mean, it'd look awful. Well, it depends on the artist. That I have seen people draw comics almost exclusively featuring the Kingpin and Matt Murdock, and you don't spend all your time thinking, I hate the panels with the Kingpin in. I guess in our case it'd be a comic with the Kingpin and Puck from Alpha Flight, who is a funny little dwarfy guy.
You're a funny little dwarfy guy.
No, that was
again, I'm distracted by trying to find the name of this character.
Or Wicket the Ewok.
You're Wicket the Ewok.
That was the point of what I was saying. Wow, there are a lot of plosives in everything I'm trying to say at the moment.
Sibilance. Chandra Jackson.
What about Chandra Jackson?
That's who it is.
The character?
That's the character.
Okay.
So we're good to go now.
Okay, let's go.
The last book I bought, I thought that bit went well. The book that features the character Chandra Jackson is number 1. It's from Vertigo, and it's called Effigy, by hacking/slashing Tim Seeley, who does the writing. Pencils are by Marley Zarcone, with inks by Marley Zarcone. Why couldn't they have just given an art credit rather than a pencils? Does Marley get more money if they split the credits?
That's so weird, isn't it?
It is weird. Because I saw pencils and inks there. I thought, it must be a different... No, it's not a different person at all. So Chandra is a police officer working in... It kind of looks like a generic kind of small town America.
Okay.
And she's a child actor, or a former child actor whose career kind of went off the rails, and she ended up making a sex tape that didn't have the desired effect. And as she admits herself, she made the sex tape to try and boost her career, and it failed horribly. So she's retraining to become a police officer, and it's kind of from the little that we learn about her career in the book, kind of appears like it's not going brilliantly. She's training and she's not shining. She has a very difficult, high maintenance, judgmental mother who one suspects pushed her into her former career. She's a deeply unpleasant woman from what you can make out in the book so far. But she's quite an introspective character, seems sort of quite conflicted about how her life went, and it's interesting because it's something I often think about. I've had conversations with people about, if you're a child star, what happens after that? You've done everything, and then you have your whole adult life to lead. What comes after childhood fame? Surely life can only be kind of downhill, you know? Which sounds like I've got a very sort of my attitude towards life is a little bit sad, but
certainly how we've both. That's what we've found, isn't it? Because we were in that show. Remember, we were in that show.
Yeah, those two darn kids.
Yeah, when we were, I was 11.
That's right.
And you were 10.
That's correct.
The irony was back then I was the tall one.
But we travelled around in a converted tank cum ice cream van.
Yeah.
Solving crimes and cheering up neighbourhood children.
The interesting thing about that was that when they put it in the Radio Times and everything, they always and it said in the said in the little, because back then every show had a little talky bit over the intro to explain what was going on. In every one of those, it referred to the tank cum
ice cream van.
And one of the
fire ice cream out of its gun.
One of the main criticisms people had was there's no cum in this program.
Yeah, but then of course, and again, the reason that this story chimed with me is we made the same decision.
Yeah,
and our sex tape was not well received either. Too hairy, too many balls was
for an 11 and a 10-year-old.
Yeah, we were very hairy, very bally pre-teens, weren't we?
That joke is in very poor taste. The show ran for 6 years, so I was 17 and James was 16 at that point.
We'd reached sexual maturity at the point we did it, but I still can't get that taste out of my mouth. I don't know about you.
I think that we might have come a cropper. We might have come a cropper because we were both well below the age of consent for two young men to be having sex. So we couldn't really get any traction with the video that way. Although apparently we've discovered in recent years that there was a huge market for it. We just weren't
ahead of the
pitching
curve,
at the BBC.
Yeah. I always feel a bit resentful in terms of the series was going great until they introduced that alien, the Grand Baboo, in the final season. It sort of really jumped the shark. I think the two preteen kids travelling around in a converted tank cum ice cream van, without any parental supervision at all was perfectly plausible. But fucking aliens, seriously. And I said to the writers at the time, you've got to be kidding me. And they said, look, you're not cute anymore. You're stubbly little teens now. We need to cue it up with the Grand Baboo. It just didn't work. He was an arsehole as well. He smiled. I'm sure he had a problem.
I didn't like him. I didn't like him very much. But you know who?
He touched me. Not inappropriately. He just touched me. I didn't like it. I've got proximity issues, boundary issues. You know.
But do you know who that guy was? I don't know if you looked him up recently.
No.
David Tennant.
Oh, I knew it.
The other thing, of course, was this was pre-YouTube and PornTube and YouPorn and all of that stuff, so it was very difficult to get that tape out there.
It was, yeah. I mean, we actually had to go around hand delivering it through people. There was something like 55 to 60 million people in that. That took a long time. Certainly just doing Southampton alone was exhausting. And it's amazing how badly received it was when we did it as well.
I feel I owe you a huge apology because at the time you were
you couldn't help it. You were excited. It happens to everyone.
You were a bit emotionally naive.
Okay.
You were a bit emotionally naive, and I was telling us we should drive around the country and hand deliver it to post it through people's doors on a VHS tape.
Yeah.
And you had this. You were obsessed with the idea and had been since childhood that you wanted Jim to fix something for you.
Oh, deeply.
So you were like, we should just we want to be famous. We should send this sex tape
to Jimmel.
To Jim will fix it. And
or
he'll
Jimmel.
Fix it for
I just called him Jimmel.
And I was like, you fucking idiot. He's not involved with distribution. This isn't the sort of thing that would make it onto TV. But in retrospect, your plan probably would have worked out better than my plan.
Well, it's nice that you admit that now.
Yeah. Anyway, so
our lives have been downhill ever since then. It's been the same for Chandra. She gets...
really, really sorry, Tim, Seeley and everyone involved in this comic.
She receives a call to attend a crime scene while she's with her mother, and it turns out that there's a connection to her past with this mysterious crime that's happened. what I liked about this, the pacing's bang on. And I read it right after Flash Gordon as well. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of a relief. It's really creepy and mysterious and odd. And it also has weird little tidbits throughout it of characters that I imagine will be developed. One seems to be an obsessive fan. One is this creepy old dude. Characters that are a bit confusing. They're sort of seems to be spiritualism and some sort of science fiction element going on in there as well. And it was a science fiction film she was in as well. So you've got this sort of pretty straight cop story going on about this young trainee rookie cop that's got a backstory with this weird taste of this obsessive individual and this guy, having this weird transcendental experience. So there's just a couple of sort of little droplets of weirdness in the pool that add additional intrigue to the strange crime that appears to have taken place as well. So yeah, a really weird, intriguing little story that that's patronising, isn't it? But thoroughly enjoyable. I liked it quite a bit. Art's nice too. Very, very simple lines, very flat colouring, but it gives this sort of weird, slightly Twin Peaksy sort of feel to the place they find themselves in. It looked
quite interesting, but yeah, cool.
I like Comixology.
A nice unusual new book from Vertigo. That's quite nice.
That's nice.
The first book that I'm going to talk about this week that I picked up was Gotham by Midnight, issue 3. It's $2.99. It's written by Ray Fawkes with art by Ben Templesmith, who I imagine is the main draw for people to this book because he's one of those real auteur artists. Has normally worked on creator-owned stuff, I think. And it's really unusual seeing him on a monthly DC book. It's $2.99. Can't remember if I said that. I talked about the first issue, but I think the second issue probably dropped over Christmas. So, but I did read it. This is the sort of supernatural Gotham book. It's got Jim Corrigan, who we know is the Spectre, but that hasn't really come up in this comic yet. He's clearly got some sorts of powers. I don't know what the treatment of him has been in the New 52, to be honest, but he's clearly got some sort of powers. But it's mainly about him as a police officer. He's been put in charge of this unit that only deals with supernatural crimes. And the first issue introduced this internal affairs guy who had been sent to them, or an accounts guy who is a police officer, but has been sent to look at their paperwork and stuff because they don't generate an awful lot of paperwork. And so we were introduced to what this team does through his eyes, and they dealt with a very creepy exorcism of these two young girls, which obviously it's a horror comic and it's got two scary twins. I think they were twins, or they were certainly very close in age.
Irish twins.
They were probably Irish twins. I don't know what that means.
Man, I'm uncomfortable that I'd like to apologise immediately.
Would you rather I cut it?
To all Irish people. I meant Catholic twins. Let's widen the net of insult out a little.
So the first 2-part story was about that exorcism, and by the end of it, the guy who'd been sent to investigate this unit was obviously he'd seen enough that he could no longer be cynical. So he was the guy who needed to be convinced of what was going on. So this third issue starts a new story. So the team, if I'm remembering right, I made the mistake of reading this very late last night when I was quite tired. So I read a Ben Templesmith comic immediately before going to sleep. So a lot of it feels like a fever dream to me. But there's Jim Corrigan. There's the new recruit. There's a female officer who's Jim Corrigan's partner, who we don't exactly know her power set. She's some sort of empath or clairvoyant. But also she was a police officer working undercover when she first met Jim Corrigan. And then there are 2 civilian consultants, one of whom is a nun, who is on the front cover and looks terrifying.
Oh, does she need some dental work?
And I think there's the tech guy as well, who we don't know much about at the moment.
She's
it's mainly.
Sorry.
It's mainly focused on Jim Corrigan, and the first story arc was him and the new recruit. The second has been this first issue of the second story has mainly been about his partner, whose name I've forgotten. Hang on.
Is it a lady name or a man name?
His partner's called Drake.
So it's kind a duck?
It's a duck name. And we get a little bit of her backstory in here. We get to see how she met Jim Corrigan, and at the same time, they're called to Gotham County Hospital to see a patient who has been brought in for one reason, but they're observing her for a little while. She has smallpox-like symptoms, which obviously is quite scary because everyone's vaccinated. So if she's got smallpox, some things, it's clearly a very virulent strain. But then they're watching her for a little bit and they're saying, well, why did you call us though? This is more of a CDC type thing. And then as they're watching, she kind of turns around and her shadow starts doing creepy things.
Oh.
And so the rest of the issue is them trying to investigate what's going on with this sort of dark presence that's manifesting in this girl's shadow, and then that escalates and it gets worse. It's a really creepy comic. I haven't, as you know, James, and probably you, listener, by now, I haven't read an awful lot of New 52 stuff, and I'm still really turned off by the whole continuity, the bigger continuity of everything. It's not really the mythology stuff, which DC, I grudgingly admit, probably do really, really well. It just doesn't excite me, so it's not really what I come to comics for. But at the moment, the peripheral Gotham titles, which are tied very loosely, like Batman turns up in the odd issue of each of the books I'm reading at the moment. So they're tied into the continuity, but they seem to be very much. They're doing their own thing. This is a horror comic.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Gotham. You know that because they say it. That's the town it's set in. But it's completely its own thing. It's the sort of book that DC wouldn't have known whether to put it out as a Vertigo book 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it is genuinely creepy. Ben Templesmith's art is really great and atmospheric. Now, most people who might be interested in this comic probably already know Ben Templesmith's art. So it's kind of a weird thing to try and explain. It is very unusual. There are a lot of artists whose work looks a bit like Ben Templesmith's now, but he's the best at doing Ben Templesmith. The only person that you can see any inspiration for any inspiration that Ben Templesmith might be taking from is Bill Sienkiewicz.
Quentin Blake.
Maybe Quentin Blake. Actually, maybe Quentin Blake.
Or Gerald Scarfe, actually.
Yeah. But within comics, I think Bill Sienkiewicz is the only person who, at his loosest, Ben Templesmith kind of evokes a little bit. But and certainly the way he uses colour is very similar. But it's just this really properly creepy book. Having talked earlier on about comics not really scaring me, this doesn't scare me, but it's about as close as it's possible. There are panels that really do a good job of capturing that thing that I suggested might not be that easy to capture, which is strange shapes that you can't really see the edge of that creep you out. That sort of comics can be very definitive. Most artists see it as their job to illustrate things, and Ben Templesmith manages to leave things very hazy at the edges, which is gorgeous. Ray Fawkes' writing is really good as well. He handles all of the different elements in the story, and although as I've suggested, there are only 2 or 3 characters that you learn much about in each issue. Each member of the team has some role in investigating this case, and he handles that really, really well. And, you know, a lot of the creepiness is going to be coming from him too. It's a good comic. $2.99 as well. They've kept that price point. It's really good. The other two books I've really enjoyed catching up with have been Grayson, which is a great espionage comic that happens to have Dick Grayson in. And I think it's Gotham Academy.
Sure, I keep looking at Gotham Academy and keep passing it by. But...
which is a really sweet sort of boarding school mystery. Yeah. It's pretty good. Bitch Planet number 2. I get the feeling a lot of people are going to be talking about this.
I got very close to jumping on with that, but I knew you were reading it, so I decided not to.
It's weird. It is not the book that I think people are probably talking about necessarily, because of what it is, which is a very prominent book that has lots of very cool cultural hooks in it, that happens to be by a female creative team and be about female creators, about female characters in a very politicized setting, which is a space prison, but a female space prison for female inmates. It's drawing an awful lot of heat, and it's getting a lot of people excited because they haven't seen anything like this before. But it's way more subtle than really popular books and really hyped books that people get excited about usually are. And it's kind of funny. I find that really surprising. I love it though. But it feels like everybody's responding to this because it evokes lots of 70s exploitation style tropes and grindhouse aesthetic, and the cover does that, and parts of the first issue definitely did that, and a lot of the talk around it does. Actually, in terms of that, I think that so Alex DeCampi, that DeCampi, the grindhouse book that DeCampi is doing at Dark Horse captures that a lot better. They are really dirty, grubby little stories that are really visceral. They're all two-parters from Dark Horse with different creative teams. And this is really different from that. There are lots of elements we've seen before. So, okay, it's written by Kelly Sue DeConnick with gorgeous art by Valentine de Landro. The first issue established the world that we're in. It's patriarchy gone even madder than things are now. We're seeing it through the prism of it being a patriarchy, but really it's an authoritarian state. It's not great for anyone.
So what if the Gamergators win?
Yeah, I mean, the unlikely... Well, actually, no, because what we're seeing is we're not seeing that entitled but kind of aimless anti-female rage. We're talking about the patriarchy that already exists, that's already kind of in control, just getting more like that. So the people who are in charge are more in charge than they are now. The society seems to be split much more clearly. The first issue established that really well. It was more violent than this issue, and so it kind of established that grindhouse female prison drama thing a lot more. And it gave you the impression that what we were going to see was very similar to the Orange is the New Black thing. The slightly timid, blonde female character who doesn't, who's a bit waif-like and doesn't feel like she should be in this violent, aggressive situation. And then towards the end turned all of that on its head. The actual protagonist in this second issue, but I mean, I'm not counting on anything at this point, but the protagonist of this second issue is a character called Kamau Kogo, who is a former athlete who has ended up in prison. And this is a space prison, which is colloquially called Bitch Planet. So, and towards the end of the previous issue, she was very near another character getting killed during a violent sort of a riot within the prison.
As opposed to one of those non-violent riots.
Non-violent riots, yeah.
I love those.
And this issue doesn't quite start. There's a bit of a cold open, but the first bit that we see that's with characters that we really recognise is her being interrogated, and they're kind of using the authorities in the prison are kind of using psychological tricks to try and convince her that she was the one who killed the other inmate that died. Okay. So she's very clearly our protagonist at this point. At the same time, we learn a little bit more about this wider world. There are elements of rollerball and because the go-to on this is going to be Hunger Games. Okay,
I've not seen or read it.
The go-to that most people are going to be using, I think, the touchstone that most people are going to be using when they talk about this is probably going to be Hunger Games or Battle Royale. We get this idea introduced that to keep people under control, to keep people happy, every couple of years or every year, there's a big sport tournament. It's like a future sport. We don't learn much about
Running
the sport.
Man.
Yeah. That'd be your touchstone. We don't know much about this sport beyond that it's very factional, and people get to be very factional for the period of time that this is happening, and it kind of is a pressure valve for that level of society. If you're familiar with all of these tropes, though, you tend to go towards it being a deaf sport. Actually, it turns out it isn't. And what you find out is that engagement is down. People are still watching, but people don't seem to be engaging as much with this activity, and the people in charge are sort of worried. And so this idea starts to form among the people who run the prison and the people who run society that maybe you could start to use prisoners in this. And so what you're actually seeing is kind of where you're used to hearing about the Hunger Games or rollerball, or you're used to being introduced to these worlds when this stuff's already going on. What's really subtly happening at this point is this really weird mix of this sort of social satire where we're finding how something like this might start to happen. Like, it's not like people immediately go from football to let's watch convicts killing each other in the streets. That's
how I started.
Well, and it's fascinating, and the A story is quite straightforward, but all of this extra stuff, Kelly Sue DeConnick is making this. I said about the first one that it's actually surprisingly not that political, and this second issue, it's really clear that Kelly Sue DeConnick's just really good at telling a story and putting these subtexts in without them becoming, without like really making them heavy-handed. It's a really good comic.
The design's outstanding. The covers are so eye-catching. They pop so beautifully. It's just a brilliant piece of design, I think.
It is. It's gorgeous, and the art makes really good use of. The first page is a 12-panel page, and you can tell everything that's going on. Landro's art is really clear. It is very stylized actually, but also realistic in a weird sort of way. I love the protagonist that's coming to the fore. I love Kogo because she's kind of ambiguous at this point. You don't know that much about her. You just, through little cues in how she's scripted, you get a sense of her ideals or her stance. You know, that she's dependable and that she's idealistic, but you don't really know her politics or anything like that. There is an excellent sequence that's happening on a treadmill that kind of you have to pay attention. What you don't realize what's happening on the treadmill because she sent her. This is an art thing, but also probably a writing thing. She's dead center, so you think you're following. You think that she's running towards you, and the camera. I'm doing that inverted commas thing is following her, but actually, it's much cleverer than that. It's a really dense but light read. I like it. It's actually better than I was expecting, and I was expecting it to be really good.
You need to be very careful with treadmills in comics.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the Flash will turn up and change everything.
Yeah, no, you have to be very careful of that. And very quickly, I want to talk about the second issue of They're Not Like Us. This is a $2.99 book from Image. It's written by Eric Stephenson with art by Simon Gane and Jordie Bellaire. I described the first issue as kind of being quite a cynical take on the initial roots of the X-Men. Mm-hmm. The idea of a mansion full of misfits in a city, misfits with powers and how they deal with that. I actually said that if Deadly Class is like a murdery version of Harry Potter, this does the same thing for the X-Men or something like that.
That's very clever.
I put it better then.
If that doesn't appear on the back of the first trade, Nick, I tell you, you've got every right to feel chagrined. In the first issue, our main protagonist and our introduction to this world, a blonde girl with a cropped hair called Sid. I'm going to take another pass at that because you shouldn't just describe characters by their appearance. Oh, I was going to pick you up on it as well. That's so disappointing.
This young woman called Sid, who at the first issue found her.
What sort of hair she got?
She's got short cropped hair.
Oh,
the first she's blonde. The first
really?
Issue found her. I can't tell. I mean, the art's great, but you mostly see them from the shoulders up.
Low to mid.
Bit shorter than
Fives?
most of the other characters.
So maybe low fives.
Yeah. The first issue opened on her trying to kill herself because she could hear everyone's thoughts, and that's when she was introduced to the mysterious members of this household. They kind of rescued her. Well, they didn't really rescue her from killing herself. They rescued her from the hospital and took her to their house. And then we were introduced to all of those characters. They've got very different powers. We were introduced to, and it seemed like a weird moment in the first issue, one of the main rooms in this mansion we were shown was a room full of records, which felt like a very hipstery, kind of a slightly hipstery thing to happen, like vinyl, not CDs.
No, I know. I went into a shop. I was browsing through some vinyl yesterday.
Oh, it's lovely. And this issue, it starts with a scene where we see how these people how the people in this house live their lives, and kind of how they make their money a little bit as well. And basically, they're kind of arsehole anarchists as presented in this first issue. There's a very do what thou wilt, and because we can thread running through this. It's
so every anarchist I've ever met.
Yeah, it's very nihilistic. They basically go out and beat people up who are just doing nothing and take all of their stuff, just because they can. And we find out more about that as the issue. One interesting thing that happens in this second issue is that we get a look at the same scene from a couple of different perspectives. So it is really nice because you don't always see that in comics. You sometimes see the same scene played out from two different viewpoints, just in terms of introducing plot elements that you didn't know about. But what you don't often see is how two characters see exactly the same sequence of events completely differently. The first time we see it, we're seeing it through the eyes of the biggest arsehole in the comic thus far. And the second time we see it, it's more through the eyes of a pragmatist. So that's really clever.
Interesting.
I did find the writing a tiny bit heavy-handed in this, and maybe it was because I just read Bitch Planet, where I said it puts all of that subtext in really seamlessly. The characterization in this is really great, but people do tend to announce their ideologies in it, and maybe because I'm a bit older and a bit jaded, I feel a little bit immune to some of those ideologies. I don't think they're as... I still like an anti-hero, but I don't necessarily think some of the ideologies presented here are as cool as I think you're supposed to if you're a bit younger. There's a very punky element to it it was a bit of friction for me.
I think we're both at that age where you start to get a little bit suspicious of cool.
Yeah. But it's still a really interesting story, and if they keep the $2.99 price, well, that's nonsense, because that's just a slight issue with writing that I actually think is really it's really well written. It's just that element of it I think I'm maybe a little bit immune to. But the art, I mean, I've gone to bat for both Simon Gane and Jordie Bellaire's work before. I love them both. And I said about the first issue that as much as I love both of them, the combination of the two of them elevates the end result in a way that I just haven't seen in many collaborations. I've seen Jordie Bellaire work with some amazing artists, and she's always good, but normally she heightens what's there while also having a very distinctive voice herself. But this feels like, it doesn't feel like either of them. And it's good, you know. And so the book looks amazing. Simon Gane's got an almost cartoony style, but puts so much detail into the real world elements that, like the clothes people are wearing and the background, that any loss of realism in the faces and the style kind of comes through anyway. So you're looking at something that's very stylized, very line art, very kind of etched and scratchy, but it feels real, completely real. And the design of this book, I loved it in the first issue. It's not the first comic that's had the first page be the first panel, the cover, be the panel, but it's one of the best looking. It's lovely. The first panel, the design of it, there's the covers, the title, They're Not Like Us, is in very big, bold letters against a white background, and then there's a sliver panel across the middle, which happens to be the first panel of the book. It looks
like a letterbox from a film.
Yes, it does actually, and it's gorgeous. I really like this comic. I mean, my best comic this week was Bitch Planet, but They're Not Like Us and Gotham by Midnight are both really, really good comics. Both $2.99 as well. So probably about £1 on Comixology. I'm
really sold on Comixology. I don't know if you can tell. It took me a really long time to get there, and I've even, do you know, I've discovered, you know, one of my big issues with Comixology was, you have to go on the website and buy it on the website and then pull it through the app. So what I've done is just created a link to the website on the like the desktop of my iPad, put it right next to the Comixology app, so it's all together. It's no hassle at all.
People always forget that they've got a web browser on their their mobile devices, don't they?
It's a piece of piddle. I'm really, really 100% now sold on, to the point where I'm really not sure how I would go about buying floppies. I don't.
You think you might not have the method in place anymore, the practice in place for it anymore?
I think I'll always want to buy collected editions, trades, but...
Because it's nice to have them.
Yeah, I'm not sure I need to collect... I don't know. Certainly my experiences of trying to sell comics on eBay has made me realise that there's certainly no investment, sir.
Look at you dangling your dick into the future.
Yes,
that's
nice.
Amazing.
Given how small it is, it's amazing I can dangle it anywhere.
What, the future?
No,
it's vanishingly small.
My willy.
That's this week's comic.
That was a lovely bit of dead air. I enjoyed that.
I think that's us.
Yeah.
I think for this week, we have found a lot to say about our comics. We'll be back next week, obviously. Mm-hmm. But for now... I think we need to go, don't we, James? We've got food to eat.
We have.
Thank you, listener. You're always awesome. And thank you, James.
Thank you, Nick.
And thank you, Nick. You just did it. I don't need to thank myself. That's a bit weird, isn't it?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.